Welcome to Stuff and Whiskey. I'm Josh.
And I'm Erin.
And today we're talking about how you can transition into sipping whiskey neat with our proprietary, patent pending sipping whiskey neat system.
Yeah. Welcome to the channel, bringing a real-world perspective to the real-world whiskey consumer.
Today we're talking about transitioning into sipping whiskey neat.
Yeah.
Like you see us doing here on the channel all the time. We get asked about it. We don't see it covered a lot. And we actually, all jokes aside, kind of do have a, not patent pending, but a, I think, unique system to transition into sipping whiskey neat. But before we get into that, we got to sip some whiskey neat.
All right, let's do it.
We got to get into the first sip, which is our segment where we try something that we've never tried before, but it's also totally blind. So we're completely unfamiliar with it. And some of this stuff is allocated. Some of it is available. We don't know whether there's any hype behind it. So you get our honest opinion.
All right.
Let's get into it.
Okay.
Okay.
Smells pretty good.
Yeah, I'm getting a really classic bourbon profile with a good bit of fruity sweetness on the front end.
Yeah, I'm getting classic, like a classic bourbon profile as well.
Yeah, I'm almost getting like a red apple and a cherry note on the nose.
Let's try it.
It's really quite nice on the nose.
Oh, interesting flavor. It's different than it smells.
Wow. Yeah, the sweetness did hit me up front. I'm getting a lot of cherry on this.
Kind of getting pencil shavings
Okay.
on the back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm getting a lot of cherry, a lot of oak, but it's not strong.
Mm-hmm.
It seems low proof. It's not bowling me over with the proof. Seems fairly balanced. Let me get into a second sip just to verify that.
I'm getting it's sweet but kind of sharp at the same time. And then I'm getting that pencil shavings note, which is interesting. I don't hate it.
There is a little bit of I know what you mean when you say sharp. I'm getting that as a little bit of spice in the mid palate, and it's swelling all the way up to the roof of my mouth.
Yes. Same mid palate to the roof of my mouth.
It's almost like it's almost like a rye spice, but I don't think this is a rye at all. I think this is a bourbon, but it's hitting with just the sweetness, that cherry sweetness. I'm kind of in my brain thinking like the red chewy sweet tart. It's not quite that chalky and not that artificially sweet, but it's leaning into that direction just a little bit.
Interesting.
One more sip.
Might almost be too sweet for me.
Yeah, it is a very sweet pour, that's for sure.
Yeah. It might be like I've had 3 sips now and it's almost like too much.
Yeah, with subsequent sips, it's becoming more balanced. And it's a lot of cherry and oak and everything is pretty kind of right there in the pocket. It just seems like a cherry forward bourbon. Very kind of classic, standard. Yeah. We say middle of the road, and some people take that in an offensive way.
We don't mean it as bad. We mean it as
when you're tasting stuff blind,
solid.
A lot of things come across kind of as just good.
Yeah.
It comes across like good regular bourbon, and that's what this is. I'm really interested to find out what it is, but before we get into that, we gotta score this thing.
Okay.
So nose, flavor, experience, where are you at?
So I'm giving a thumbs up on nose. Just okay on flavor and just okay on experience.
Really?
It was kind of too sweet, honestly, which is not something
fair.
I have said before.
It's been a minute since you've had that.
Yeah.
Yeah. To me, this is a thumbs up across the board. Nose, flavor, and experience. I like it. It's really enjoyable. I hope it's readily available and about $30 or $35. I feel like there's a lot of products on the market that kind of fall in this $30 to $40 wheelhouse that you can get this similar experience from. Let's find out what we've been drinking.
All right.
And then we'll talk about availability, price, and whether we buy it again. This is not a bourbon.
It is a rye.
This is Knob Creek, the small batch rye, the 100 proof.
Interesting.
We've never had this product before.
Very sweet for a rye.
It is very sweet for a rye. And Knob Creek rye,
It's very sweet for
I'm almost sure it's a 51% rye. Like it's just barely.
Just barely.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it probably has a ton of corn in it. A lot of sweetness is coming from that. And it's so interesting that I'm getting a cherry note because that's something I get on some Knob Creek picks. And I also get kind of like a green apple sweetness from a lot of ryes. And this is kind of like meeting in the middle somewhere. Wow, this is very interesting. Yeah, I'm going to take another sip now that I know what this is.
It's still really sweet. I don't know why.
Yeah, now you do tend to like a more earthy rye.
I do.
It's not so sweet.
I do.
I think if you're a bourbon drinker and you really don't know about rye and you're not sure about dipping your toe into those waters, this is a good rye. Like
try.
Yeah. If your go-to is like a bottled and bond 100 proof bourbon and you really like a sweet profile and you want to try rye, try this rye.
Yeah, because it doesn't taste like a rye.
Well, now that I know it's a rye, I can get that rye on the nose, and it does hit mid palate with that spiciness that we were talking about.
Does, yeah.
That does hit like a rye hits, but the sweetness that's there is so much in the bourbon wheelhouse.
Oh yeah,
almost to an exaggerated point. This almost tastes like a cocktail, like an overly sweet cocktail.
Yeah, I could say that.
This is fascinating. Okay. Let's get into our real world metrics here. Our retail score and our consumer score. Retail being the price and availability, and consumer score being whether we would buy it again or not.
Okay.
So as far as retail goes, very readily available.
Okay.
I think it's about $35.
Okay.
Give or take a little bit. I don't think it's any more than 40. That's right in the pocket where I said I would like this to be, coincidentally. And as far as would you buy it again or not? What do you think?
Well, retail score and price and availability gets a thumbs up. Good price, good availability. However, I personally would not buy it because it's too sweet for me, and I almost feel like I would get a headache from the perceived sweetness sugar that I'm getting, even though there's none.
Yeah.
So it's thumbs down on consumer score. I would not buy it.
For me, I'm gonna give it 2 thumbs up on retail score. I think the price at $40 or less is great.
It's a good price.
I think it's a really great price. There's so many ryes out there like Bullet Rye and Sazerac Rye and Elijah Craig Rye that are a lower proof point than this, but very close in price. So to be able to get those extra proof points and honestly a lot more flavor than those bottles in this product is great. It's almost a pseudo cocktail. So I really like that about it.
It is.
And this is very rarely I say this, but I want to try this on ice. So would I buy it again or not? I'm going to give it a thumbs up. I think because I don't like really sugary cocktails. Like I like old fashions, but if they're too sugary, they really bother me.
Yeah.
And I would much rather just drink this on ice.
And pretend it's a cocktail?
Yeah. Throw a little orange thing in there.
That's fair,
you know, I can skip the sugar. I can just put a little dash of bitters and a cherry and an orange.
Call it a day.
Oh, dude. Like this is great.
There you go.
I'm very happy with
cocktail in
this.
a bottle.
There you go. So if that sounds like your bag, check out Knob Creek Rye. And if this channel is your bag, if you like this channel, then check the video description below for a link to our Patreon. And you can get even more of this channel over there.
Yep.
We do there's a bonus content tier. There's a bonus content tier where we do 2 additional videos every week. They're uncut, so the bloopers are built in.
Yes.
And you can check all that stuff out over there. We also do blind flight nights with our Patreon community where we send out blind flights. We hop on a private live stream together. We do monthly private live streams with our patrons. And we also have a spreadsheet of all of our whiskey scores, and that's where our community is online as well, since we're not on social media.
If you want to talk to us on the internet, that's where you go.
Yeah, check us out over there.
Or you can go in the comments below.
Yeah.
Because we're also very active on YouTube. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and leave us a comment, and we'll hit you back.
Hit subscribe. Let us know what you think about Knob Creek 100 Proof Small Batch Rye.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated to hear, because this isn't a product that a lot of people talk about very much.
Yeah, there's
very little buzz about it.
I will agree with you about the cocktail. Like it is a cocktail to me. It's very sweet.
Yeah.
And it's a cocktail.
Yeah, there you go. So let's get into our main topic this week, which is our proprietary how to sip whiskey neat system.
So I've heard this before, but I'm interested to hear it again.
Yeah. So if you watch our November live stream with our friends Kat and Catlin, they were not super experienced in whiskey, but we were trying to figure out how to get them into sipping whiskey neat, because they wanted to learn.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. You got to want to.
You have to be willing to learn, or you have to want to be sipping it.
Right. Don't try to force this on somebody. You don't go to your significant other who doesn't like whiskey and be like, here, try this neat. Like, that's not going to work.
Yeah.
So what you got to do if you want to get into sipping whiskey neat, you've got that desire, you got to eat your whiskey. Okay. This is
not as crazy as it sounds.
This is very lame, but you have to eat it. And by saying that, what I mean is you have to embrace the experience. You have to acclimate your palate to it, and then you get to taste for flavor. So super corny, old school, old man, EAT, eat your whiskey. So let's break this down, because I really do think there is a lot to this. You got a glass of whiskey that's neat. First off, glass matters. So I probably wouldn't start with a Glencairn glass.
Would you start with a rocks glass?
I'll probably start with a rocks glass because a Glencairn glass, these tulip-shaped glasses funnel the vapors into your nose, and you got to be really careful because you can get overwhelmed by the alcohol if you're just getting into sipping
We've
neat.
done that.
Yeah.
When we let our guard down, I can get overwhelmed.
With a rocks glass, you can go to the top of the glass, you can go to the bottom, you can kind of work your way around, and it's not going to bowl you over with the nose.
Yeah.
So probably start off with a somewhat approachable proof point. Honestly, something 100 proof or under is a really good place to start. Don't necessarily be scared off by the proof, and maybe don't just grab the bottom shelf pour either. Like, try to get something a little bit more elevated that is going to be good for neat sipping. There's a lot of people who buy Jack Daniels, but there's not a lot of people who sip it neat for good reason. So maybe reach up a shelf and grab you something like a Knob Creek 100 proof 9-year bourbon, or the 100 proof small batch rye, or a Buffalo Trace, or an Elijah Craig small batch 94 proof, something like that. So get that, and then you're going to embrace the experience.
Okay.
So you're going to get ready for it. So you're smelling it, and you're not smelling a cocktail, okay? You're not smelling a chocolate milkshake. You know, it's alcohol.
You're smelling alcohol, so you're probably going to smell alcohol.
Right. So smell that and then move past that.
Yeah.
Okay? And then start to find what's behind the alcohol. So now that you've embraced the experience, and you're going to take your first sip, and just get ready. You're drinking alcohol. So let's take our first sip.
Okay.
Our first sip.
So the first sip is going to burn.
It's alcohol.
So the A part is the acclimate. Is that meaning taking a second sip?
Yes. So the first sip, you are drinking alcohol. So there is going to be some level of burn there.
Yeah.
You don't order spicy hot wings and expect to not get any spice.
Yeah.
So don't drink alcohol neat and expect to not get any alcohol burn. That's just part of the experience. But once you get used to it, you'll be able to move past that very easily. I mean, most of the time, unless a pour is really unbalanced and very alcohol forward, most of the time I don't even notice it anymore.
Yeah, I would say a second sip is crucial.
Yeah.
So you get the first sip to get past the alcohol burn, and then take the second sip to actually taste the tea part.
Right. But let's talk about this real quick, because when you're taking a sip, you're not filling your mouth up. Sip it like you're sipping hot coffee. Like, you just want a little bitty bit on your palate. It doesn't take much when you're actually tasting the whiskey. So just get a little bit on your palate. I'm talking like you could measure this in a dropper. Like, you're not getting very much at all.
Yeah.
And then let it rest on your palate for a second before you swallow, just like you would do hot coffee or soda. Like, when you take a drink of Coca-Cola, something carbonated, you don't expect it to be, Coca-Cola is not smooth, but it's good.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it tastes good. It's not good.
It's not good for you.
It's terrible for you, but it tastes really good. So when you drink it, you drink a carbonated beverage, that carbonation doesn't allow you to just swallow it down right away.
It's true, yeah.
Alcohol, hot coffee, that's all the same. Like, so take a sip, let it chill out on your palate for a second. Your mouth, your tongue, you're going to start salivating a little bit. That's going to kind of help to water it down a little bit. And then when you swallow it down, then you're going to be able to get more of the flavors.
Okay.
So you've embraced the experience. You've let your palate acclimate by letting it sit on your palate for a second. You're using the right glassware to make it approachable. And then you actually get to taste the whiskey. So when you take that sip, be ready for the burn, and then go in for a second and a third sip, and give yourself a few sips to get used to it.
Yeah.
And by the third sip, you should be able to move past the alcohol. If you're doing all the other things we said by taking little sips and letting it sit, you're going to start to find other things, and then just start to think about what it reminds you of.
That's all I do.
Yeah. If you see channels that throw out 15 tasting notes, that's fine. Some people can do that. If you watch any of our videos, we can't do that.
We can't do that.
No. And that doesn't...
I've said some things have tasted like a rocking chair before.
Yeah. And
because I get the oak, but to me it reminds me of how a rocking chair smells.
Yeah.
So I say this tastes like a rocking chair.
Yeah.
That's what I get.
Green apple Laffy Taffy. You say stinky feet, dirty socks. You said one thing tasted like an angry toddler, which I'm still trying to figure out, like, almost a year later.
There was one thing I said tasted like an emo grape.
Yeah.
And now I can't remember why I said that. And I can't believe I said that, but in the moment, it reminded me of an emo grape.
Yeah, and look, you're having your experience, and the way you taste things are going to be different than the way anybody else tastes anything. So if you can't pick up on flavor notes, don't worry about it. But what I think is helpful, once you start to taste for flavors, you can start to dissect the glass in a way of like, okay, is it sweet? Is it not? Is it earthy?
Yeah.
If it is sweet, what kind of sweetness is it? Is it more like artificial candy sweetness, or is it more kind of like
fruit,
actual fruit sweetness?
Yeah.
Or is it leaning more towards like the darker, like a chocolate candy bar side of the equation, which is what I personally love.
You do.
So you can kind of pick through a glass and think, okay, is it balanced? Am I getting a lot of sharp edges? Is there alcohol burn there, or is it a different type of spice? Because pepper is great. It's got some pours have black pepper on them, so you can start to kind of pick apart a glass in different ways.
Yep.
And it is a really fun experience to sip things neat. It is how we tend to enjoy pours. We don't do a lot of stuff on ice. We don't make a lot of cocktails, partially because we're kind of lazy. And then
true stories.
The other part is I just want to taste what the spirit tastes like.
Yeah.
And I'm more interested in trying this spirit and the next spirit and the next spirit rather than tinkering with it too much. Last point of note is if you do find a pour to be a little overwhelming, don't be afraid to add water. When you see something that's on the shelf that's like 80 or 90 proof, all that is something that used to be 125 proof.
And they added
it
water
came
to
out
it.
of the barrel at whatever proof it came out of the barrel at, and then they watered it down to 80 or 90 or 100 proof or whatever.
Yeah.
So if you have a pour and it's particularly challenging, put some water in it.
Just a few drops even changes things, can change the flavor immensely. We've had at least one blind head-to-head where we did, was it Knob Creek and then Knob Creek with water?
Yeah.
And they tasted like two different pours.
So that's it for this week. Eat your whiskey to enjoy it if you're trying to get in.
Eat it.
Oh man, I was thinking that when I came up with this, and we resisted until now. So
we've done Michael Jackson wrong.
All right, let's get into our other stuff for this week because that's it for our main topic. And as you guys know, I'm a watch guy. If you've been watching the channel, I'm a wristwatch guy. I really like wristwatches. You're into watches.
I have a wristwatch. I just don't wear it. I just don't wear it very much.
Yeah. So if you like watches, if you like whiskey, then you need to check out the Whiskey and Watches podcast.
Oh, it's a melding of the mind.
It is. So you get it. They do some whiskey talk on the front end. They talk about cocktails, cocktail recipes. They talk about the whiskey they're sipping if they're doing something neat. Sometimes they even have distillers on, blenders, all kinds of stuff.
Okay.
But then they get into the watch talk. So it's definitely more of a watch nerd podcast, but it's three friends. Sometimes it's all three of them. Sometimes it's just two, but you always get these really, I think, down to earth perspectives. And they honestly inspired this channel in some ways. So the guys that run it over there are friends, and their tagline is enthusiasts, not experts. And they say, don't at us because they're not trying to be experts in watches. They're coming at it from an enthusiast angle. It's really down to earth. And I really appreciate that in watch content when people aren't trying to be experts.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that in whiskey content as well. And seeing those guys do such a good job over there. And we mentioned Kat and Catlin. They do 10 and 2 Media. We'll put links to both of those podcasts in the description below. But it's a really down to earth perspective on watches, and we wanted to bring that to the whiskey space. So those were, inspirations for us, and we're spreading the love a little bit and giving those guys a shout out over there.
That's it for today's episode. Thank you for watching.
Till next week, guys.
Cheers.